So I tried to write this out as a sort of video essay script type of situation, but I couldn't get the script to work. I tried to rewrite it a couple times. In the end, I've decided to just make this a PowerPoint presentation. So welcome to the root cause of all of tf2's successes and failures by me Fish. Presentation by me Fish. That's me. So the TF timeline. Let's just get this straight. So first of all, you've got the Doom Fortress map. And you've also got Quake, and then there is Quake World TF, and subsequently to that you have Team Fortress Classic, aka TF 1.5, and finally TF2. Okay, we've got that sorted out. So what we do here is we go back. That's what we do here. We go back. Not enough people have played Quake or other arena shooters, and I think because of that, people don't understand why Team Fortress was invented in the first place. Because Team Fortress was invented to solve a number of problems with Quake. And calling them problems is maybe a little bit too far. They're not necessarily problems, but maybe you could call them areas of friction with the original Quake, with the way Quake works and the way other arena shooters work. So let's talk about Quake. So you may have seen I called it QWTF, Quake World Team Fortress. This is because Quake World is the mod for Quake that was made by id Software. That is like the multiplayer mod. The original Quake, it was like peer-to-peer multiplayer. Same with Doom. They had internet multiplayer, but it was peer-to-peer. Quake World introduced the modern client-server architecture for multiplayer online video games that we all know and love, which is much better. So Quake is an arena shooter, and you probably have a vague idea of what an arena shooter is, even if you've never played one. They're played on smallish maps. They have pickups for weapons, armor, health, and power-ups and that sort of thing. And they have very fast movement and fast, high-speed gameplay. And they're played in a sort of free-for-all deathmatch format. But in a casual level and at a high level, usually small teams. So the sort of premier high level gameplay is 1v1s, but you'll also see 2v2s and sometimes even as high as 4v4s, but rarely anything past that. And you can actually play Quake right now. You can play Quake World online against real gamers. It's still played. I played some today. It's legitimately great fun. I can understand why everyone loved this game. Back in the 90s, I can understand why people still love it. It is great fun, even though I got my ass handed to me. You can just go to this link, nquake.com. You can download it for free open source software, and play Quake. It's great fun. I do genuinely recommend it. It is really fun. But Quake is sick. Here, this is what Quake looks like if you've never seen it. Look at this. I'm telling you, look at this. This is fucking crazy. This is a crazy frag movie, and I mean, just look at this. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4 airshots. Are you kidding me? Like, what the hell? These guys are insane, man. Anyway, I gotta show you this, man. Okay, look at this. Boom, then boom, and Mr. Beast. It's crazy. These guys are fucking nuts at the game. Quake is sick. I'm telling you, you gotta play Quake. Okay, but Quake is really fucking hard. This is the problem with Quake. Quake is too hard for me, man. This is my opinion. This is my opinion. I might catch some flack for this, but in my opinion, arena FPS 1v1s are the most intensive test of FPS skill in any game. They are the most pure, intensive skill tests of any game. I think if you took a top FPS player from any other game, you took Simple, you took Donk, you took Tens, you even took Banny, you throw them in a Quake Live, Quake World, the Half-Life Deathmatch, you throw them in an arena shooter against someone who's a high-level gamer in that game, and I think they would lose every single time. I think they would lose every single match, and I don't even think it would be close. And I will talk about why I think that in a second, but they are very, very, very skill-intensive, and Modern games, I think they focus, modern FPS games tend to be very, very hit scan centric with a low time to kill and almost no projectiles. And combined with abilities like Valorant or like Overwatch or whatever the fuck, your character has these sorts of abilities that go on cooldown or whatever. Um, Whereas arena shooters, they test all three different types of aim. They test your projectile aim, they test your tracking and your flicking, uh, as well as your movement. They are very movement heavy, movement intensive games. Everyone's moving real fast. But it's more than that. It's much more than that because arena shooters amplify skill differences. And I want you to pay attention to this because it's a key concept for this lecture. Arena shooters amplify skill differences. So what do I mean by that? And don't just take my word for this, by the way. Don't just take my word for this, because I am a noob. I am a noob in arena shooters. So here's an expert. This is Kovac. You may know him from his aim trainer, Kovacs. Yes, it is that Kovac. Kovac of the Kovacs aim trainer, who I suppose, unsurprisingly, used to be a pretty damn high level Quake player. And this is what he has to say about it.
In Quake World, a very small difference in skill can result in a huge difference in score. There are seriously score differences of over 100 in a one-on-one, even though it's only a 10-minute match, and that's even with people who've played for years. And certain maps lend themselves more to that than others, but the point still stands. There are going to be people who can beat you 40-0, people who can beat those people 40-0, people who can beat those people 40-0, and it just goes on like that. The major reason for that is that there is a serious imbalance in the weapons and the strength of the armor. So if somebody has a rocket launcher and red armor, he can just keep killing you. You have shotgun. If you don't get a good weapon, you'll die and die and die and die. Then he'll get another red armor and repeat. It's very brutal. 4-on-4s can be even worse. You can have 400-0 scores, or 400 negative scores for that matter.
Okay. I think we got the point across. Thank you, Kovac. Just to hammer this point home, you ever played Mario Kart? So Mario Kart is the opposite of this. Mario Kart tries to minimize skill differences because the further ahead you are, the worse items you get. The further behind you are, the better items you get. Plus, if you're in first, you're under threat of being blue shelled. So that way, even if you suck at the game, you get buffed. If you're too good at the game, you get nerfed. So that everyone can have a good time because Mario Kart is just a fun game for having fun in. Whereas arena shooters are designed in the opposite way. They amplify skill differences because of what Kovac said, that there is a weapon imbalance and there are a number of pickups that respawn on a sort of timer. And so what that means is if you win a fight early and get control of the good weapons, which normally pretty much every arena shooter is centralized over just one or two weapons. So like in Quake, it would be the rocket launcher and the lightning gun. In like Half-Life Deathmatch, which is the arena shooter I personally am the most familiar with, it's the Gauze gun, no competition. Pretty much every arena shooter is balanced around just one or two of the good weapons, and then every other weapon is just hot garbage and basically unusable unless you have no choice. And you're not gonna win. You're not gonna get any kills with it. Like they just suck. And because of this, if someone wins a fight early on and they get control over the weapons, the good weapons, that means they can take all of the armor pickups before you can, and so they can become even stronger. They can take all of the buffs if there's a quad damage or a mega health, and they can retain control over that for the entire match, because you won't be able to get to them without getting killed by the player who is just much stronger than you now, because they have all of the good weapons, all of the armor, all of the health, all of the buffs, whatever, and you have nothing. And so what that means is it's very easy for players to go on a sort of rampage where they win a fight early on, and then they keep that momentum going by retaining control over the important pickups in the match, also in the map. And arena shooters don't have any, I'm calling them gimmicks. I think that's kind of a mean way to put it, because I don't mean this in a bad way. But like, in Counter-Strike, for example, if you were to try and peek an AWPer, you would die because the AWP is a better gun than the AK. But you can use a flash grenade or use a smoke grenade to give yourself an advantage in that situation. Or you could outflank the AWPer and come up behind him when he's not expecting it and get that first shot in. Or, there are a number of different options like that in different types of video games. You have options available that let you circumvent a skill difference or a weapon difference. So, like, it doesn't matter how good the MGE soldier main on the enemy team is. If you Uber a free-to-play pyro directly into him, there's nothing he can do. The guy's invincible. Like, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. Arena shooters have nothing like this, not even a minor thing like this. There's just nothing you can do against a player who's better than you, even by a very small margin. Because the games are all about control. It becomes a war of attrition where one person gets a kill early on and then they go on a rampage with the other player slowly trying to find little chinks in the armor to slip through, and then the other player exploits a mistake that the other person made or manages to pull off an insane play or something like that, and then they get control of the situation, they get the map control, they get control of all the power-ups, and then they go on a rampage for a while, and it sort of goes back and forth like this. And that's in a high-level game with two players of even skill. But if you go up against a player who's even just a little bit better than you, you're just going to get stomped. And you can experience this yourself by just playing any arena shooter. I already linked to where you can play Quake World for free, but you can download any arena shooter. There's a number of them on Steam. Some of them are very good, like Warfork, for example. I recommend that one. That was good. But you could play Half-Life Deathmatch. You probably already have Half-Life installed, so you could just play that already. You could play all sorts of. There's lots of arena shooters, and you will get stomped by experienced players. I promise you that. You will just get pwned extremely hard by experienced players. So introduced to the scene, Robin Walker, John Cook, and I think his name is pronounced Ian Coughley. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I think it's Ian Coughley. So these guys are programmers and Quake gods. And I don't mean that. That's not hyperbole, okay? Robin Walker, the creator of Team Fortress 2, as we all know him, was probably the best Quake player in Australia for some time. He lived in Australia. Like the number one Quake player. At the very least, one of the best Quake players, but quite possibly the best Quake player. Which is pretty damn impressive, right? These guys were going to all sorts of tournaments, and they were also hosting LAN parties just for their friends. And this is where they ran into a problem with Quake. Quote, "We had a very broad spectrum of players with different skill levels. There were some people who were not really hardcore gamers at all, but who wanted to come home to LAN parties and play." And you can see how Quake Deathmatch, being a game which emphasizes skill differences, amplifies skill differences, would make that unfun. The experienced players just get to stomp noobs while the less experienced players don't get to enjoy the game at all. And so, classes seemed an obvious thing for us to do as a way to make sure everyone was having fun. And they invented Team Fortress. So, how did they rein in Quake's skill gap? Well, they turned pickups into classes and then buffed them accordingly. So, for example, the nail gun used to be a weapon that sucks in Quake. It's like the worst weapon. It's so bad. You'd never use it. But they turned it into an entire class that's now Scout, and they buffed the damage by a lot. The rocket launcher is now Soldier. The grenade launcher is now Demo. And I'm going to go on a tangent here. People often say that demoman in Team Fortress 2 has two primary weapons, as a sort of joke, but also kind of true, right? Like, he's the only class with two primary weapons. You know why that is? In Quake, the grenade launcher, or I suppose in Team Fortress Classic, the grenade launcher is Demo's primary, and his secondary is a shotgun. Because the grenade launcher in Team Fortress Classic has two modes, or I guess in Quake Team Fortress, in Team Fortress 1, I should say, to be more precise. In Team Fortress 1, the grenade launcher has two modes. It has the normal mode, where it works like the grenade launcher in TF2, but it also has a secondary mode, where after you fire it, the rollers don't detonate until you press mouse 2, like stickies. So it used to have both abilities just in one weapon, and it got split into two weapons when they made TF2. So and then they got rid of the shotgun. So Demo actually literally does have two primary weapons. They literally took the primary weapon from TF1 and just split it into two weapons in TF2. So there you go. That's why Demo is like that. And then Medic is the health pack. Medic is a health pack. In TF1, he's literally carrying a health pack around, giving it to people. To be more precise, I think Medic in TF2 is probably closest to the Mega Health, but we'll talk about that later. But what this means is that one good player can no longer control access to these mechanics because they are not pickups, they are classes. The other thing they did is they made it Team Fortress. So if you suck, your team can support you by dealing damage to enemies to make them easier for you to kill, or by cleaning up after you die. And you can also support them by doing damage for them to capitalize off, or by playing a support role like medic or engineer. And also, there's a fortress involved. So you could always play the objective. You could just run to the flag in CTF. You don't have to necessarily have the best deathmatching skill. As long as you can slip past the enemy's defenses and get the objective, it doesn't matter. So, Quake World Team Fortress is extremely successful. More people are playing Team Fortress than they are playing Quake Deathmatch. It's by far the most successful mod in Quake. And so a number of different publishers and games companies approached them, but Valve was the most sort of, I guess, they gave them money. They were very direct. They were like, hey, we like what you do. Here's some plane tickets. Just like, here, have them. Come to Seattle. We'll pay for your hotels. And so they hired the Team Fortress team and hired them specifically to make TF2. I'll try and speed run through this because I'm sure you guys know this already, but actually maybe you don't. So Team Fortress Classic is a strange case, and I'm not going to focus too much on it here because Team Fortress Classic was basically, it existed for kind of two reasons. Because TF2 was expected to release very soon. Like, they thought they were going to get TF2 done in a few years, not 9 years. And so Team Fortress Classic was basically a port of Quake Team Fortress to the Gold Source engine to try and advertise Half-Life as a modding platform in the same way that Quake had been a modding platform, where Quake, they released a bunch of tools to make modding easier. Valve did the same for Half-Life, and they wanted, but no one was making mods, so they wanted to advertise like, hey, come make mods for our game. And so they made, they had this popular IP now. They had, because they'd hired Robin Walker, they had access to this popular, well-known IP of Team Fortress. They thought, like, we can use this to advertise the fact that, like, hey, you know that mod you love? It's here too. You can also make mods for this game. And it was a success. That's why Counter-Strike exists. So it was an advert for Half-Life as a modding platform. They actually were distributing Team Fortress Classic for free with Half-Life. And it was also a test bed for things that would eventually make it into the Source engine and make it into Team Fortress 2. And we're talking about like boring mechanics like voice chat or netcode stuff, that sort of thing. As well as sort of a training ground for these new developers who had previously been working in the Quake engine to working in the Source engine. Because, TF2 was expected to release real soon. So they didn't want to put too much new stuff in TFC because they were going to put all the new cool stuff in Team Fortress 2. So it's a fairly honest or basic port. And that's why I called it Team Fortress 1.5 in the early slide, because they actually called it this. When Half-Life 1.1 released, version 1.1 of Half-Life, they released a update to TFC with it, which I believe is basically the same version of Team Fortress Classic you can play now if you download it on Steam. And that update, they called it Team Fortress 1.5. That's what they called that update. And I'm pretty sure they were calling this game TF 1.5 internally, because it was really just supposed to be a stopgap in between, Quake Team Fortress 1, and TF2, which was, again, expected to release real soon. They didn't expect it to be 9 years. So, TF2 had a number of problems. inherited from Team Fortress Classic and Quake Team Fortress to fix. And so they fixed some problems with the classes. In an arena shooter, if one of the weapons sucks, it doesn't matter because people will just not use that weapon and they'll just use the good weapons. But if someone doesn't play an entire class, that's kind of a problem. So they had to fix some of the problems with classes, and the biggest ones were Scout and Medic. Scout and Medic were a complete mess. Because both Scout, so Scout and they both had very different roles to what they have today. They were fast. Scout was really, really fast. Medic was pretty damn fast. But it doesn't really matter how fast their movement speed was because they had conch grenades, which I'll talk more about in a second. But they both had conch grenades. They both had really high mobility. Scout had the nail gun, which on paper was more powerful than the shotgun, which is what Medic had. But in practice, it was much harder to aim and much harder to use, especially on lag. So it didn't really make much of a difference. And a lot of people who even played Scout would just use their secondary, the shotgun, in place of the primary because it was more reliable than the nail gun. And Medic also had a shotgun, but Medic also had more health, the ability to heal teammates, and also, weirdly, the ability to poison enemies. There's a thing in Team Fortress 1. Medic can, poison people, which does, damage over time. So Medic was basically just better Scout because they both ended up with this role of, a flag runner who doesn't, they were too weak to really engage enemies front on, but they were super, super fast. And in Team Fortress 1, it doesn't really matter if you can go so fast that if you can conch jump way faster than a sentry gun can turn, then and way faster than anyone can shoot at you. It doesn't matter if you can't kill them because you only have to grab the flag. So pretty much this became the optimal strategy very quickly, and Medic was pretty much the best class for this job because he was just better Scout. So obviously they reworked both of these classes significantly from TF1 to TF2, where Scout became much more of a combat-focused class. His gun actually does damage now, and he can double jump. And Medic, obviously, is not a combat class at all anymore, and is entirely focused on support. He has a medigun, he can uber charge, and the nail gun sucks for fighting people. So some other things got reworked. Demo. Obviously, I already mentioned that Demo's primary got split into two different weapons, but also what changed with Demo is not so much Demo himself, but the other classes around Demo, because in Team Fortress 1, every class had grenades. Obviously, we already talked about the conch grenades that Scout and Medic had, but other classes also had grenades. And so Demo didn't really have much of an identity as the grenade slinging explosive class, but in Team Fortress 2, they removed the grenades. And so Demo now has much stronger class identity. Pyro, see, this is something kind of strange. So when I was researching for this video and reading all of these old interviews with Robin Walker and with Valve from before TF2 came out, from after TF2 came out, from just as TF2 was releasing, I was trying to get as broad a picture as I could. It seems like they're really confident that they've changed Pyro a lot, that Pyro used to suck. He was just a worse soldier. So now we've changed Pyro into this ambush class. And you can see they keep talking about Pyro as an ambush class without really explaining what that means. And you can even see this. I believe there's even a bit of flavor text in TF2 that describes Pyro as an ambush class. But that's not how you play Pyro, really. I don't really know what Pyro. Pyro's not that different. I mean, he's different, but he's not that different. And obviously, Pyro didn't have Air Blast when the game released. So I'm not sure what they mean by that. But they keep talking about it. They keep talking about how they reworked Pyro into this ambush class. I don't really see how that happened, but they love talking about it. And obviously, Engineer didn't used to have teleporters in Team Fortress 1. That's a pretty big deal. And, all the other classes also received some changes. Every sniper rifle used to work like the classic, and now they work like sniper rifles. Every class had some level of changes, but I'd say most of the other ones are fairly similar. But every single class's base movement speed is way slower in TF2. If you load up Team Fortress Classic or Quake Team Fortress, you'll immediately be struck by just how much faster everyone moves in that game. Or if you vice versa spend some time playing those games and then switch back to TF2, you'll feel like you're moving painfully slowly. Everyone's movement speed, even like Scout, is just so much slower in TF2 than it used to be in TF1. And they removed conch jumping, so you don't get to just instantly jump across the entire enemy for free. Rocket jumping actually costs health, which I think is a much better mechanic. Except the conch jumping, now that I think about it, when you're playing Badwater and one demo man like puts down 2 sticky jumper stickies and teleports across the map to your spawn, that's basically what conch jumping was. You know how that's really annoying? I love doing it, don't get me wrong. I do that shit all the fucking time, but it's really annoying to be on the receiving end of. That's basically how conch jumping works. So I, for one, I think I'm kind of glad that might be out of the game. I think one of the reasons that they did this, why they slowed the game down so much, is because Team Fortress 2 was a console game. And it's not something we really think of these days, but TF2 was released in the orange box. It was released simultaneously, I believe, for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. It was developed simultaneously for all 3 consoles, well, for PC and consoles. And I think, just imagine trying to play Quake on an Xbox controller. It would suck. I don't think you could play TF2 with a controller anyway. I don't really understand how anyone did that back in the day or does that unless they're using gyro controls and flipstick. But at least I can maybe picture in my head how you could play pyro or maybe heavy on a controller. Probably not going to be able to manage sniper. But they never said it explicitly in any of the interviews I could read. But I think this is my theory, it's my hypothesis. I do think that some of the changes were made to sort of make it a little more compatible with console. But this is great. We love TF2, and TF2 has had many successes, and it succeeds because Quake is already really fun, even if you're bad. I just played a bunch of Quake today for like 3 hours. I was playing Quake. I was having a great time, even though I was bottom of the scoreboard in every single game, and it wasn't even close. So Quake is already really fun. So when you take Quake's mechanics, but you also add these classes and objectives, it solves the skill gap issue, because you can always play pyro or engineer or medic and not have to fight anyone. But it also has much better pacing at all levels of play. I think this is actually a big deal. And they talk about pacing a lot in these early interviews. Like with journalists just before TF2 released, they talk about how their focus on pacing. And I also think this is maybe most evident comparing high-level Quake gameplay to high-level TF2 gameplay. So like a pro Quake match, there's a bit of a back and forth, between like who currently has the best armor and the best weapons. There is a back and forth, but it also is like when someone's dominating, they're just dominating. It's kind of a 1 or 0, black or white type of situation. Like when someone's winning, they're just winning until they're suddenly not winning, and then they're losing really hard until they're suddenly winning again. And it's just kind of go, go, go the whole time. Whereas like watching sixes, it has a much more varied and interesting, like almost narrative flow to it, where you have downtime, where both teams are sitting back and the scouts with the Boston Basher and they're building Uber before a big push, which then like either succeeds or fails, and then the big last push failed, so we got to retreat, and the other team chases them back, and it's like we got to fight over mid again, and the game has this flow to it, even at like the highest level, where there's these like big bombastic team fights where epic stuff happens. There's 1v1s with some stragglers on either team. There's hype moments when medics get airshot, but then there's also like downtime where the tension builds, and there's a back and forth, but a back and forth doesn't just mean one team's dominating, like, we got pushed back to our last, but we won that fight and now we're pushing back, and it's like, who's going to win? It's good. I like it. I like sixes. Six is actually very fun to watch, even though I don't play it. But it's, this is also obviously the case in casual, where you have, Uber and stuff like that, that give these sort of big rare high moments. TF2 is also has a lot more variety, especially the modern game with all the weapon unlocks and all the maps. There's so much variety of different play styles and ways to play TF2 that just doesn't exist in a game like Quake. In Quake, there's really one way to play. There's really one way to play Quake. Whereas in Team Fortress, especially TF2, there is almost an overabundance of different play styles, and not all of them are viable. But a lot of them, what's great about it is that even if they're not viable, they're often really fun, like Trollger, for example. And that's, I think, a good reason why the game has stayed so popular for so long. And there is a lot of downtime in TF2 that doesn't exist in Quake, right? There's a lot of struggling to push upward last and just sort of staring at a choke point for 5 minutes. That kind of, it has its negatives, but it also does mean there's time to be wacky, which I think is really fun. There's time to have little interactions with your teammates or with the enemies, where you're doing taunts, you're doing congas, maybe even something as simple as just like your medic heals you and you turn around and nod vigorously and spam the thanks voice line, which I like to do. Like stuff like that. You obviously can't do that in Quake, because if you stop paying attention to the screen for a split second, you're dead. And there's a lot of Quake in Team Fortress 2. Like even stuff people don't think about. Obviously everyone knows that the original is from Quake and stuff like that, and rocket jumping and bee hopping originated in Quake. And demoman, Quake, the Sixes classes are all the Quake weapons. But even stuff you wouldn't expect, like overheal, I always thought that TF2's overheal mechanic was like genius. The way you get overhealed and it slowly ticks back down. I always thought that was like genius, and I thought TF2 invented it, but no, that comes from Quake. I only found this out today from playing Quake. That like in Quake, there's a mega health pickup that works exactly the same as overheal. It gives you a health buff over your base that then slowly ticks down. And also like crits is a quad damage basically. In Quake, there's a pickup that makes you quad damage for a time period. The crits is pretty much the same thing, except it's triple damage instead of quad damage, but functionally it's the same thing. But again, this is transforming something that was once a pickup into a class. These are both things that medic can do, which I think it's cool. But this is interesting. The medic only has a syringe gun because of this guy. You ever consider this? Medic only has a syringe gun because of this guy. Who the fuck is this guy? This is Trent Reznor of the band Nine Inch Nails. So in Quake, or in Quake Fortress, Quake Team Fortress, and Team Fortress 1, Scout has a nail gun because it's one of the weapons from Quake. There is a nail gun in Quake, but there's a nail gun in Quake because this guy, Trent Reznor, made the soundtrack for Quake. And because he made the soundtrack for Quake, there's a bunch of Nine Inch Nails references all over Quake, including the fact that they put in a gun that literally shoots 9-inch nails. The nail gun is just a 9-inch nails reference, and that was originally a scout weapon, but then it became a medic weapon when it transitioned to TF2, except it became rethemed to be the syringe gun. But the concept of having a nail gun in the first place is only there because this guy. I think that's kind of cool. There have, however, been some negative consequences of the Team Fortress design philosophy. I think the biggest one is this: that some classes are just better than others. They're just objectively better than others. And in a game like Quake, it doesn't matter that some weapons are better than others, because that's how the game is supposed to work. Some weapons are supposed to be better than others. You fight over the good weapons, and if some weapons are so bad that they go ignored, that's fine. Doesn't matter. But if some classes are so bad that they go ignored, that's a big problem in a game like Team Fortress, which is why the scout and medic thing was so in need of being fixed when TF2 came out. But even though TF2, the classes are relatively balanced, they're still pretty imbalanced. Demoman is always better than pyro, and there's no real argument to be had about that. Pyro kind of sucks. and in high level gameplay, only a few classes are played all the time, and a class like Spy or Pyro, they do get played, but only in very, very niche, very specific scenarios. And I think this is a shame for a lot of people, because there's a lot of people who really love Spy, and who are really good at Spy, but can't play Spy at a high level because sixes just doesn't have room for a Spy. And even Highlander, where you need a Spy, playing Highlander Spy is like the most miserable experience a human being can have. So Spy's entire class kind of depends on the enemy team not being highly coordinated and aware that you exist, which just can't exist in a competitive environment. So it's basically impossible to play competitive Spy, at least in the sort of epic trick stabby Mr. Swipes way, which is just a fundamental limitation of Spy as a class, and that's the thing, right? Is that if a weapon is like that in a game, it doesn't matter. You just don't use that weapon in that situation. But if it's TF2 and that's the class you love playing, there's it just kind of sucks for you. If you love playing Pyro, if you sorry, you want to play Pyro in sixes, you can't. You want to play Pyro in Highlander, you're going to be sitting next to your medic and spy checking the entire game and doing nothing. Like there is just stuff like this, and it kind of sucks. And then you also have classes that are, like Demo used to be really overpowered. I would say he's still extremely powerful, but I don't necessarily think he's overpowered. I do think he's the best offensive class and defensive class in the game. He's the best like combat class in the game. Medic is the strongest class in the game, but Demo is second. But I don't think it's unfair. I think it's fun to fight demos, because they have strong weaknesses that are exploitable. I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, so the other thing is TF2 is stalemate heavy. It almost balances skill levels. Sometimes it can balance the skill levels too well, right? Where if the skill levels are really balanced in a game of TF2, then just kind of nothing happens. The game just grinds to a halt. And you could just end up staring at a choke point for 10 minutes. And that can be pretty boring, and it can be pretty frustrating because you feel like you're just bashing your head against a wall and nothing's happening. And this I said it's about skill levels, but it's not just about skill levels. It's also about class composition. If the enemy team suddenly decides that they have 5 engineers on, Dust Bowl Lust, there's nothing you can do about that. You're just going to be bashing your head into that for the next 20 minutes. And the other consequence of this new team-based gaming with relatively large teams, in casual it's 12v12. That's a lot of players compared to Quake. A Quake server with that many people would be complete chaos and unplayable. With 24 people on a Quake server, it'd be a mess. In competitive Quake, normally it's 1v1s and 2v2s, and sometimes slightly more than that, but not by much. Whereas the smallest competitive format in TF2 is 6v6. So you have these much bigger classes where team coordination and your team is a much bigger deal, and so team balance is a huge deal. It doesn't matter how good you are. If your team sucks, you're gonna lose. And you can see this. Somewhere on YouTube, you can find a video of like all of Tech, who, if you're not aware, Tech are the best. Well, actually, maybe not anymore. They kind of sucked at the most recent tournament. They kind of got completely owned, but have historically been the dominant team in the world at Team Fortress 2. And there's a video on YouTube you can find of them playing casual, like all queued up together, and just getting completely rolled on Swiftwater. Even if you have the 6 best players in the world, arguably, playing together, communicating in TF2 casual, even they can get rolled on Swiftwater. by a bunch of noobs. Sometimes it's just nothing you can do. But it's not just skill. Even if it's not a skill issue, it can sometimes just be class composition. You know, as I said, if the enemy team decides to stack 5 engineers on last, there's basically nothing you can do. If you're stuck on a team with 5 really, really good spies, you're gonna lose. If you're stuck on a team with 5 amazing sniper players who just hit every shot, but they're playing snipers, so none of them push the cart, you're gonna lose. You know, class composition and skill suddenly matters a lot, and that means there's stuff outside of your control. You know, it might be the case that Quake amplifies skill differences, and this can suck, especially as a new player. But at the very least, when you practice, you can get better and eventually win those matchups. In TF2, because it's so team dependent, maybe not as team dependent as some other games, but a lot more than Quake, which is not team dependent. You know, sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are. Sometimes your team just sucks. Sometimes the enemy team is just really good. So in this gamer's opinion, tf2's imitators fail because they try to take from Team Fortress 2 without understanding its Quake roots. And secondly, it would be best if arena FPS games could exist in tandem with a game like TF2. I think both formats have their strengths and they have their weaknesses. I love TF2. I have thousands of hours in the game. It's my favorite game. But I also really would like to see games like Quake make a comeback, just have a stronger active player base, more resources for new players. You know, there's a lot of resources for veterans because there's a lot of veterans. It would be nice if there were more tools, more tutorials. You know, if you play Quake or another arena shooter, make some tutorials, you know, get them on YouTube. You know, I would love to see these games thrive because I love arena shooters, even though I'm terrible at them. I might be able to hold my own against you if you're a noob and we play on Crossfire in Half-Life Deathmatch. But if you're a good player, I stand no chance. But anyway, I think arena shooters are great, even though I suck at them. And I think that they're kind of the flip side of TF2's coin. And I think a lot of people who like TF2 would also like arena shooters. It's basically like, imagine you're playing a game where you're a soldier, but you run as fast as a scout. That's Quake. And you have the lightning gun, which doesn't exist in TF2. Imagine you're a soldier, but you run as fast as a scout, and you have a crazy OP weapon that just does infinite damage. That's how you play. That's how Quake is. Yeah, I just think I'd like to see these two things exist in tandem, like back in the day with Quake and Team Fortress, the mod for Quake. You know, they existed in tandem with each other. They complemented each other. I'd love to see that sort of thing come back. And that's it. That's the end of this presentation, and that's the end of this video.